is 8 o'clock. What's up, everybody? It's the Arty 84 Show live here, episode 201 on this fine, cold November day. As always, Adam the Mallet to the left of me. And this is actually the only time of year the studio is actually at content temperature. And I don't need air conditioning.
Nice.
If it gets much colder than this, I will require heat. Unfortunately, this room does have a vent, but heat is not hooked up to my second floor for some reason in this house. So that's a fun project I have to get involved in.
What's the basement get like then?
Basement
really cold.
Fucking freezing. When the basement gets done over, it's gonna have its own system down there. It's gonna have like one of those, those things they hang on the wall.
Yeah.
It's like Mitsubishi, like split. They call them split units.
Okay.
I'm gonna put one of those down there because it'll have air conditioning. It'll have heat, so it'll be just enough to keep the area of the basement that I need air conditioned. You know what I mean? So, but like the basement doesn't get that cold. I mean, I was down there in January, and like I think the coldest it gets down there is probably like 65 degrees. It's all subterranean. Like majority of the basement's on the ground. There's only the back part of the basement is actually at ground level. The rest of it's all on the ground, so it stays pretty warm from the natural geothermic activity.
I feel like that type of environment's not bad. You can keep your beers in there. You don't even need to put them in the fridge. Just keep them in the basement.
Yeah, you could. It's good for wine cellars. I do have a nice cooler on the fridge. If you have not seen the Instagram, we do have the nice deck done, and there is a nice
it looks great
refrigerator out there with all the beer in there. And it's great because the refrigerator is set at 34 degrees. It's been an average of like 50 degrees during the day, and then it drops down to like 30 something at night. So the refrigerator is not even working at all. It's just keeping it like it's maintaining it. The only thing I'm concerned about is when it gets really too cold outside. I know the refrigerator just won't work. They'll just like not continue to refrigerate, but I am concerned about it freezing the beers. So I don't know what I'm gonna do about that when it gets. And I read online I got to take my TVs in at -4 degrees. LCD screens will freeze.
-4. Nice. I'm glad. That's good to know. I don't need to know that now, but that's like one of those things I could need to know someday.
Well, I didn't know. I had no desire to fucking take the TVs off the mounts and bring them in. I mean, it takes 2 seconds, but I'm like, I just really don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I want the convenience of that one nice day you have in January. I could go out there at 50 degrees and watch TV without having to fucking put the TVs back up.
Yeah.
I'm not really concerned about anyone stealing them. If someone wants to fucking steal them, I mean, this is going to be first of all, they got to get to the alarm system on the deck. And once they get past that, if they do, they got to make sure they brought a screwdriver with them so they can unscrew the fucking mounts to take the TVs off. And then you better have 2 people going with you, because if you don't have 2 people, that could be an issue. And if you even get the TVs, you have to disconnect the power, but the power is into the wall. So you would have to buy a whole new AC adapter.
I see.
It's really not. I mean, the TVs are $80 a piece. The little ones I have.
Yeah.
I mean, who's fucking stealing an $80 TV in God's country up here?
And even if, let's say, you are able to get through all of that and accomplish your goal, you're still probably on camera.
Oh, there's 7 cameras looking at you.
Yeah.
Literally. I mean, I'm just giving everyone a warning. If you want to break into my house, there's cameras in it. There's no blind spots, put it that way. And it's not even the same cameras. I have like Amazon cameras, and I have Blink cameras, and then I have Ring cameras. I have 3 different companies' camera in my house. I will find you, and I will track you down. Not to mention my alarm system is hooked up to the police department. So as soon as you open that gate, the alarm will go off. So,
see, I don't have cameras per se, but I have razor blades in spots where if you reach under the window to try to grab and pull up, you will slice your fingers.
Ooh, that's evil.
It is.
So it's actually really, really, really smart booby trap.
It is.
Like Kevin McAllister.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I'm like, there's only really one spot anybody could ever break in here. So I'm just gonna Home Alone the shit out of this and like try.
Well, that's right. When I lived in Everett, my master bedroom was like in the we had this giant. Oh, you never been to my Everett house? It was like this 2-story ranch, and I had a deck that went the entire length of the back of the house. So you got to it by like from the kitchen, and then the master bedroom was actually on the deck too. Like you couldn't get to the deck from the master bedroom, but the window was right there, and it used to freak us out because like if you open that window, because you could get in the deck easily, just get into the backyard, and you could like hang outside that window and just get into the apartment that way. And we did get broken into, but the idiots broke through the front door, and we had an alarm, so that was kind of stupid of them. But at night I was always like, I swear I heard people on the deck sometimes, like out there. We had animals out there for sure. We had like different like coyotes and shit. We could hear them at night, like walking on the deck, raccoons and squirrels and stuff. But yeah, what I did was when I installed the air conditioner for the bedroom, I put it on that window, and then I screwed the fucking. It was probably really unsafe. I screwed the window shut so you couldn't break into it. But if there's ever a fire, you kind of be fucked because you wouldn't be able to open the window. So,
True.
but,
Yeah.
I mean, it was Everett. So, and it was Everett on the Chelsea line. So it wasn't like it was Everett on the Malden good side of Everett. It was on the shady side of Everett. So, I mean, I had 5 bodegas within walking distance that sold beer at a convenience store.
Ooh, nice.
So we get tonight on the show. We have there we go. I'm gonna fuck it up. Chris Griggs will be joining us shortly. Griggs. He is in New York by way of Memphis. He's from Memphis, Tennessee. He's a good old boy for himself. So he will be joining us shortly. I will fuck up his name about 14 times today. I will say Giggs because in my mind I'm saying Giggs, so I'm gonna say it. So it's gonna be fucked up. So that's good.
Distinct lethal weapon, but without the R or the G.
Briggs. I'm excited. I am flying out. Oh shit! Friday. And I can finally use my VIP access to the lounge in the airport, which I haven't been able to use. Basically because, well, I've only flown twice since I had the card. But, I mean, you really don't want to take a kid into the lounge. They're free on the 2, but like I don't want to piss people off. Right? If a toddler running around in like a lounge that's meant for like professional. I have no right to be in this lounge. There's people like myself aren't usually the people that you would suspect to be in this lounge, but it's free booze and it's free food. But I pay a membership through my American Express card. So I'm actually going to finally get to take advantage of this. So I told Sue that we get access to it 3 hours prior to our flight. Our flight's at 9:00 at night to Charlotte. And I plan on parking my car for free at the bar, like I usually do, taking the shuttle for free, like I usually do, and getting to the airport and drinking free alcohol. So it's going to be a great, I should be bombed by the time we land. I'm going to be so intoxicated by the time we land in Charlotte. It's going to be fucking crazy.
Yeah. You'll be so intoxicated be having conversations with your kid. That makes sense.
My kid's not even going to be there.
Oh, that's right. Your kid's not coming. Duh.
He's not coming. This is a kid-free vacation. The kid is not. It's not like we didn't want to bring the kid with us. It's just like a football game is a very intense sporting event in which requires 100% attention for the majority of the game. And even if you're paying attention to a football game, you are missing aspects of it, right? So like the way I looked at it was like we could not bring them. Baseball is different because at least baseball games you can sit there and it's like this so long and drawn out, and it's a regular season game. It doesn't really give a fuck if you win or lose. It's kind of like, whatever. And we've taken him so he's been to a Red Sox game down in Texas and in Arlington. So that was this MLB game he took, and he was what?
What was that? Did I see your dog?
No, that was my fucking. I need a WD-40 mic stand.
I thought I heard a bark.
I got WD some 40 shit. So we took him to a baseball game, and then we took him he's been to a Portland Sea Dogs game and 2 Woo Sox games. But, I mean, his attention span's about an inning and a half. You know what I mean? So it's like, what does that relate into football terms? Like a quarter?
Maybe.
You know what I mean? We took him to a couple of Celtics games, and that's just like, the first Celtics game we took to, he was way too young. I think he was like 3 months old. That was just garbage. It was not even worth taking him. I think he paid attention. He was able to like not be a pain in the ass for about a quarter. And he was a baby, just crying and stuff like that. And then we took him on Mother's Day, but luckily we took my parents with us. So my mother pretty much just entertained him the entire time. So that was good, but still a little too young. I think in a couple of years he'll be able to appreciate the events. You know what I mean? A football game, no, especially it's the cost of a ticket for a football game. I mean, it's ridiculous. God. I mean, we're paying. I think we paid $220 a ticket for this game, and it's not even over face value. Face value is probably like, I think it was probably like $1.80. So we're only paying like fucking $20 more. You know what I mean? Than if we bought them right from the box office. But I mean, no, it is. We went to freaking Jacksonville, and even those tickets were expensive considering it was fucking Jacksonville.
I was shocked how much that stadium was. Like, remember we thought we were going to get like cheaper beers there? No, it was pretty comparable to Gillette and Fenway. The prices was
I
ridiculous.
feel like it's all the same. The cheapest places I've ever had alcohol was when I went to the Super Bowl in Atlanta, and it's only because the owner of the Falcons purposely makes all the shit there wicked cheap because he doesn't want to make any profit. So like, it's the cheapest food in football. It's the cheapest drinks in football. And when I say cheap, I mean it's like, all right, what's Gillette? $12 for a beer. The Falcons is $9 for a beer. So like in retrospect, it isn't exactly cheap, but it's cheaper than it would be if you went to somewhere else. You know what I mean?
I don't understand why you can't just for like one day, one game, or like even 1 week at a stadium, like you have like for instance, like the club, Coogan's, they have dollar draft.
Yeah.
They still have dollar draft. They should just do that for like 1 week.
Then you have what happened in
yeah, pretty much
Cleveland.
Yep.
Dollar beer night in Cleveland back in 1970 something, and for
That's
the
true.
Indians. Well, we can't call them the Indians anymore. We got to call them the Guardians, which is actually debatable because they're in a major lawsuit right now because there's a roller door.
Yeah, I told you. Yeah, I brought that up last week.
Yeah, so we'll just call them the Cleveland baseball team at this point, so we don't avoid any further lawsuits. Yeah, they had that dollar beer night back in like the 70s or the 80s or something, and it ended up turning into the amount of people who got arrested and the kind of chaos that went down. It was a double header too. I think it was like a dollar beer double header.
They should just do it.
Terrible. But do you remember when the Red Sox were offering? I think it was 2000. It was 2013. After they had that terrible season in 2012 of the chicken and beer. Remember they were like, we're gonna have $5 beers.
Yep.
And then you go to the stadium. It was the 2013 season, and they gave you originally you would get a 20-ounce beer for like whatever you paid. They were giving you like I think like 7-ounce beers for $5. So when you did the math, you weren't actually saving money. You were actually spending more money because when you if you figured how much a 20-ounce per cents per ounce was, you actually got a better deal getting a 20-ounce than getting a $5 ounce. And they didn't tell you it was only Bud Light.
What a bunch of assholes. Like they were probably sitting there like smirking, like we're going to give these assholes, we're going to make them think that they've won, but they did. Yeah. They couldn't give it to us. They still would have won even if they did dial down the cost, but they couldn't even do it.
Well, I wrote an article on the Packy, and this is back in 2013, and I broke down the money. Like I literally did the dollars per beer, how many ounces you got, and like did the facts, and it was proven that you were better off getting a regular size 20-ounce Bud Light than it is buying a $5 Bud Light because the ounces per dollar were. Because then you're gonna figure you tip on that too. So if I'm drinking 3 $5 Bud Lights, that's equivalent to like say 1 20-ounce Bud Light. I'm only tipping the $1 on that one Bud Light. Now I'm tipping $3 on there, so you don't even figure that onto that. So it's like it's starting to add up. And the cups were like ridiculous. They were like fucking like Dixie cups, like you would have in your kitchen. Like when you have like one of those water bubblers at your office and you have the cups that sit next to it. It was like a little slightly larger than that.
Oh, it's true. Yeah.
It's another John Henry. Oh, we'll give the people what they want. If we give them cheap beer, they will come and drink the cheap beer because they like beer because they're idiots. Because Boston's full of fucking idiots who just drink beer and watch their sports and they don't pay attention to profit margin.
I don't think he's smart enough to come up with that. Actually,
no, probably not. No, he wasn't. It was probably some fucking intern, one of his little minions that worked from. But John Henry, I get this great idea. I was crunch numbers, right? And I realized that people are stupid. So if you actually say it's cheaper, but you give them less, they'll think they're getting a deal.
You're making one of his interns sound like some guy named Lenny from like the Bronx or something. So like we're gonna like up this.
I'm an intern from what do you call it? UCNY, well, University of New York, Buffalo. Fuck yeah. Hi. Yeah, I go up to school, Buffalo. I'm Lenny from Syracuse or something like that. I talked to these people last night. They're at the bar who have a kid in Syracuse. Do you know how much Syracuse is a year for college? You will die.
God.
This is Syracuse. This is I believe I don't know. I think it's a private school, but it's technically like, yeah, it's a private school, but it's like it's not anything. It's a good school, but it's not anything that blow your mind.
Well, I have the internet here, and motherfucker, you're telling me it's upwards of around $50K?
Well, they're paying $80 because they live on campus.
Fuck! That's insane.
Otherwise, like, I'm paying $80,000 a year for my kid to go to Syracuse. I'm like, really? I go, I go, it's a good school, but I don't know if it's worth 80. Because we're talking, have a conversation. I was bitching about my student loans, and then they told me what they were paying a year, and I go, wow, that's what I paid for my entire 4 years. So I don't feel that bad. Can you imagine leaving school with $240,000 just for your undergrad? I'm like, I had 180, but I had some graduate classes in there too.
Yeah.
But upwards to $500,000 for an undergrad.
You're not going to pay that off for a while.
You'll never make that money back in your career.
Yeah, like hope you get lucky in the crypto game.
Yeah, like if you justified the job you could get with this degree compared to the job you would get if you didn't have this degree, and then the difference of pay wage, right? So say it was like 15 grand a year, you'd make less, but you aren't paying this increasingly interest that was put on this loan that ends up being double the amount of money by the time it's matured, that you were just better off just taking the pay cut and living the life. With, you know what I mean? Without making $1,000 payments. Now I'm paying $1,000 a month. If you have $500,000 worth of student loans, you're paying $2,000 a month on your fucking loans. You'll never pay that off. Who pays? I mean, like I told you, I'll pay my loans off once my kids graduates high school, which is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, and then you're gonna have to help pay him pay.
No fucking way. My parents didn't help me pay.
Yeah, fuck yeah. There you go.
You're on your own, kid. Here you go.
Yeah.
I'll have the same conversation my father had with me. All right, here's your loan. This is how much it's going to cost you. You're going to have to pay it back. We'll pay for your books and shit like that. They gave me like they did help out with like for books and like supplies and stuff like that, like the, you know, the minor costs, because I would spend upwards to like $500 a semester on art supplies for building models and shit like that. So they did stimulate me on that. But like as for the core costs, no, you're on your own, kid. My mother would write me a check for books, and I'd get like $500 a semester. They would give me to like towards all that stuff, which is generous enough. But like in the large picture of it, when I got my first bill in the mail, I almost shit my pants.
Do you think it's gonna get better?
No, it's
or stay the same? Well, I'm banking on that. Yeah, that's why I have heavily invested in SoFi.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Stock is only 20 something bucks. Go for it. I got some shares.
We
should have that for 10 years.
Yeah, right. No kidding. Maybe Chris could give us some. We're gonna bring in Chris Griggs right now, a guest for the night. Comedian.
Griggs.
He's in New York.
Hey.
Yes, we did it.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How's everything going on your end?
We're doing good. We're just bitching about the economy, you know, and student loans and stuff. And you know, I'm sure you're a man who understands the idea of student loans and how worthless they are.
You spend the rest of your life paying off. Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds ridiculous.
I had to put myself through college, man. It's a bitch.
Yeah, we're just talking about the same thing, and about I was having a conversation with people who are putting their kids through college now, and I've been 10 years out of college at this point, and it's just getting more expensive. It is not getting cheaper.
I don't understand how people do it, because I have a twin sister. She's got 2 kids, and she's been divorced 4 times. I've never been married. I don't have any kids. Oof. The life of a stand-up comic. But like, I never get, if it costs like $100,000 to get your kid educated, that's just that. Yeah. Who are these people that can have kids? Like, I don't, unless they just go $500,000 in debt, I don't know how they do it, especially living in Manhattan.
Oh yeah, exactly. So I mean, you are the prime source. Living in New York is kind of like, you look at that, the epicenter. That's probably the most expensive, or one of the most expensive places in the entire.
It's right up there, if it's not the most expensive. Right. Yeah.
So like, if you look at those numbers and you compare it to the rest of the country, it's like, damn. Like, if this is the top, then I don't want to see the bottom. It's just unbelievable.
Well, the average cost. Now remember, this is pooling all together of medical school is $54,698 a year. Now that's obviously everyone is different. Every school is different, but like, that's a fucking salary.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, like, even back a million years ago, like, what did it cost when you went to college? Like, what was it?
I was paying 15, 16 grand a year 10 years ago, and I went 7 years. For grad school. Grad school went up to about 20 G a year. But when you figure like that, me and Adam were doing the math, and I'm saying to myself, I'm like, you know, if I just didn't go and work in the same job I'm working at now and just took a little bit of a salary cut, it would be a wash. It would be actually, I would make more money at the end, because I'll pay off college once my kid graduates high school. That's what my college would be paid for.
Oh man. Even like always feel for parents that spend all that money and then the kid decides they want to be a poet or an actor or something, and it's like fuck, oh, like couldn't you just tell me that when you were 18? Did you have
Right.
to go to college and figure it out?
Yeah, my parents are pretty good at not letting me get a useless education. I pretty much, if I think I said that to my parents, they'd be like, "Well, I was on my own anyways for the most part for paying it
Yeah.
off." But I think like if I said, "Hey, listen, I want to be like, I want to, I want to get into a history of like I don't know, of toaster ovens and stuff. Like I want to major in toaster ovens. Like that's all I want to study for 4 years. They'd probably look at me like I.
But do you want to get a minor in microwaves? No, toaster ovens.
Yeah,
that reminds me of you ever seen the movie The Other Guys with Mark Wahlberg and Will
I
Ferrell?
love that film.
And Michael Keaton's working at Bed Bath and Beyond to pay for this kid who's going through college, who's a bisexual, so he can be a DJ.
Don't go chasing waterfalls.
To give you a comparison on life, right? Adam and I both work. We work at the same company during the day. We have the same exact job. We do the same exact stuff for the most part.
Yeah.
I went to college for 7 years. Adam did not go to college, and the world goes full circle. So this is a proven fact. If anyone out there who's debating if they want to go to college or not, you're looking at two guys right now, and this is it. This is what happens.
Unless, of course, you want to be like a neurosurgeon, then you probably should get some school.
Yeah, I think that go to school for that. I think that.
Or go work in Mexico. You can.
Or
do that
I don't know. Like for me, it was backwards. I got a degree in communications, which is kind of broad and useless, and I got a minor in marketing. So I did wind up. I was a writer at an ad agency when I got out of college for a while, and I worked in advertising for a bit. And I did make money, which was nice to know at least what it feels like for me to lose it and pursue a career as an actor in comedy. But I don't know. Yeah, college is great. It just people shouldn't have to go that much in debt just to figure out their life.
Yeah,
I think
marketing. Sorry.
No, I think the whole college thing, they just took advantage of people. They know that they're like, it's like anything else, right? If I move the price up a little bit, people will pay it, and you just do it slightly, and you just do it little by little by little, and then people don't realize the price. You know what I mean? And it's like, before you know it, you're just like, whoa, how did I get here?
And colleges can even be the worst because they're raking in cash, charging absorbent amounts for tuition, and they underpay their teachers. So they just stick it to the teachers all the way around, and they're sticking it to the students. And it's all under this moral umbrella of education. I mean, it's kind of like one of those things. I was talking to a friend of mine. Like, there's certain things in life that we accept, but you kind of know you couldn't morally defend. Like if you really think. I mean, we were talking about the Me Too movement and a lot of that, where like for so many years, like the Hollywood system of all of these crazy assholes that were predatory with people, we kind of all knew there was a casting couch. Everybody knew intellectually that this was a systemic thing, and we just like, that's the business. Stand-up. So much stuff with stand-up comedy. It's like, that's the business. I don't know what to tell you. It's the business. But you couldn't morally defend it. Like if a gun was to your head, the way we treat VAs doesn't even matter your political affiliation. Like, what are you gonna do? We just kind of roll with it. And then that's why when people have moral, righteous indignation about certain things, it's just interesting to me that it's sometimes very selective about just which way the wind blows.
And it also would benefit certain people as well, too. So if it's helping you,
it is totally about really, you can learn a lot by what someone believes when it actually is not to their benefit. Because most of the time when people get on their horse, it's really trying to create something to protect something that they already benefit from.
Sure. That's politics.
Yeah, very true.
Nutshell right there. Yeah.
I mean, like there's a lot of like one of the cool ones is always that if we take care of the uber rich, they're going to take care of us.
Yeah.
And we go, yeah, cool. I buy that. Yeah, baby. Let it trickle down on me. That's cool. Yeah.
It's the waterfall of wealth as it goes down, right? It's like little bit.
Don't go chasing trickle down is what Michael Keaton would tell us.
Yeah, you got to creep. You got to creep.
You got to creep.
Bro, did you just say a bunch of TLC songs in one?
Well, we were doing it going back to the other guys because that was Michael Keaton's whole thing. Yeah. Because Will Ferrell's going, come on, You did it. You're
Yeah,
doing
it's a
TLC
reference.
What are you
yeah.
talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't doing TLC.
Yeah.
So, Chris, you're originally from Memphis. Is that where you grew up?
I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. I've lived in New York now though for 20 years. So I guess I don't know I think it counts me. I'm a New Yorker now, but yeah, my family still lives there. The nice thing sometimes about being from the South, it's a nice little time bubble that you can always just go back because there's always going to be people you went to college with there. There's always going to be people. My sister lives there. So yeah, you can always go back and visit.
What do you?
Stays
So
the same.
you've been in New York for a good period of time now. Did you go there for 20 years? Did you get there after or before 9/11?
I got here before 9/11, and weirdly enough, I was not performing at the time. I was still kind of working in advertising, and I was working on the U.S. military's advertising, even though I've never been in the military, which was another kind of a weird thing. But yeah, and so I kind of I didn't have the guts to really go into performing as much, and I was making some decent money, in advertising, and so we were supposed to be at the Pentagon the day after 9/11. So I'm in a meeting and we're talking about the meeting the next day at the Pentagon. And then someone's like, turn on the television. And then we see what happens. And I mean, I still stayed in advertising for a bit, but I immediately kind of knew I was going to change my life. I think like a lot of people, it was just this thing like, what am I doing? I don't even have kids and a family to pretend that there's some reason to kind of just keep, get in the maze. So why don't I just do what I want to do? And that's kind of what I did. So then I just started, figuring out a path to acting and started doing crappy plays and, stand up. And I always liked improv. Like from the moment that I landed a plane in New York, I started studying in a Second City program that they had at the time because I was always such a comedy nerd. Was obsessed with all the old SNL people and how they learned at Second City. And I'm like, well, they got to be doing something if they're churning out people like Bill Murray and Belushi and Chevy Chase and those guys.
Yeah, I feel like the majority of the SNL cast, especially like the 80s and the 90s people, are all Second City people that came out there.
They were mostly Second City people, and then the only comedy coach they ever had at SNL, I think it was either the first or the second season, but it was a guy, Del Close, who was sort of like the godfather of that whole improv Second City thing, which eventually became Improv Olympics in Chicago and became kind of a big deal. And then sadly, they all did drugs. And, Del Close was a huge drug guy. Him and Belushi used to do drugs all the time. And then who knows what they do now? I guess Adderall is probably what the cool comedy kids are doing now in the writer's room. I don't know.
Probably because they stay up for hours at a time.
Yeah.
They get prescribed to them from their doctors because they say they can't pay attention in class. So it's like,
yeah.
What made you, obviously you were pursuing a dream, but like, that must have been pretty difficult going from working in a professional career in New York City and Big Apple. You made it, right? You're in marketing,
yeah,
right? And then all of a sudden you're like, fuck it, I'm just gonna start from the bottom and just work my way back up and try to start a whole new career.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but I didn't have an end result in mind. I just sort of had this thing where I didn't want to be in the old folks home one day and not know if I tried. Okay. And sometimes, like New York won't give you the guarantee of success, right? We all know that. But one thing that New York really will give you is the idea of where you could be on a professional scale in a certain field. And I think that's the difference. Like if you live in certain parts of the country, I would say a lot of parts of the country, and you want to be a botanist, well, who cares? But if you wanted to be a botanist in New York, you got to live with the fact there's probably some super nerd Illuminati botanist group hanging out and just doing God knows what, and they're the greatest botany group in the country, and you got to live with that. So like if you love comedy and you're in New York, I mean, man, there's no better place. And the bad part is there's probably more stand-up comedians than cockroaches in New York. But the good thing is that you're going to see some of the greatest stand-ups ever, and you're going to watch them get better and better. And I was just kind of thinking about old folks, me, sitting around telling stories. I love being around comedians. I love being around comedy. And it was just about kind of living a life. I always, at the time, I kind of think at least the first 5 years, there's probably a good part of me that thought I might eventually go back to advertising. Yeah. It's not like it goes anywhere. Yeah. It's still around.
Yeah,
or move back to Memphis at some point. I don't know. I probably didn't, but then at some point, I don't know. It started. It's not like it never worked to any kind of or it hasn't worked into any sort of Bill Burr level of success. But I don't know. I make it work. You know, I live in the city and it works, and I've gotten to do some fun, cool things and be around amazing people that I respect.
Question, like, what pulled you into comedy? Did you have like a moment where you were like, I really like that comedian? It's just that's what kind of drew you in and pulled you towards it more. And like, who are some of your favorite all time?
Well, that's a great question. I think I mean, for me, it was the person that completely, I think, blew my mind. Robin Williams always blew my mind, and maybe that's the reason why I still love improv and stand up, because he was amazing at both. Robin Williams, and then Robin Williams was really into Jonathan Winters. And so then I got into Jonathan Winters. Like, what's this guy doing? This guy's just pulling props out of a hat, and like, you know, probably the only interview you'll ever be able to see of Robin Williams on the Tonight Show where he doesn't speak hardly at all is when he and Jonathan Winters was on there. He just sat there in awe of Winters. And I was very into Steve Martin. So definitely there was this taste of people that could sort of seem like they crossed lines. Like Steve Martin was a magician, you know, almost like a carnival act. He sang, he danced, he did stand up to stadiums, and then he walked away. So that was definitely my initial impetus. And then at some point, Chris Rock became a big deal to me, and Eddie Murphy, and then Chappelle. But though early on, it was definitely Robin Williams. I don't think anyone had ever seen anything like Robin Williams.
No, definitely.
I mean, if you ever just Google back to like his first few television episodes, even before he got his own TV show, it's almost like it's very you're watching this guy and you're like, oh, this guy's famous. This guy's going to be famous. That's pretty rare. You know, like when you just see someone, and you're like, oh, this guy's going to be famous.
There are certain ones that you can even see on television. They just emit this energy that you can even see it. Like, wow, that guy has something. And I've always had respect for. I never thought Andy Kaufman was that hilarious, but I respect how, like, he sometimes would barely say a word. And just his body language and how he interacts, and people are just dying laughing. And I'm like, Jesus, like I would kill for something like that.
Well, Andy Kaufman is amazing to me because I love anyone that's an artist, a true artist. And maybe, you know, like if you go to Memphis, go down Beale Street, there's all these amazing blues clubs. There's going to be people that are playing and they know they're not going to ever be famous, but they play because they love blues. Andy Kaufman, to me, I'm from Memphis, and Kaufman, that whole wrestling thing that Kaufman was doing in Memphis, that's just for the love of the game. I mean, he's already on a hit TV show. He's already rich. There's no reason to go do regional wrestling with Jerry Lawler, who is great, but he's not. Jerry Lawler's not a national. He's not even like a Ric Flair type at that point in time. I'm going to go to Memphis, Tennessee, and then he played the villain. He didn't even play the good guy. He wrestled women. He played this crazy asshole who was like, I'm going to beat all you girls. Oh, I'm a woman in Memphis and I can't brush my teeth. And then he would wrestle just for the love of, he loved wrestling. And you just got to tip your hat to a guy that loved art the way Kaufman did.
He was like the coolest man in the room in his eyes. Like in the movie Man on the Moon, right? When they just did his whole lifestyle. And it was kind of seen in the eyes of like what Danny DeVito, which was his agent at the time, right? I guess that's the character he played.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny seeing it from that angle and how he like would perform like an act on like, say, like he was when he was on Taxi and they were filming, and how he got into this character and he just wouldn't leave the character. Like he was like 100%.
He was method.
Yes. Yeah, he was dead on. And he didn't care if like, you know, anything outside of the art was going on, like in his personal life. He was the character, and like he was just so zoned in. It was so fascinating that he was so dedicated to whatever he was doing at the time that it was just it takes a whole nother level of art. I think it's beyond comedy. It's more like it's more theater, like realistic.
It's hard to find someone that's odder in a TV series than Kaufman, because he was method. He was method with Latka, and then that wasn't enough. So then he became method with his stand-up character, the stand-up character guy. And then he's got Andy Kaufman method trying to book the other Andy Kaufman stand-up guy. And they're supposed to both be on the show at the same time. And all the cast is like, they all want to kill him probably, you know. I think Judd Hurst and him got into a fight at one point, physical altercation.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then there's a great documentary where Jim Carrey, when he was doing Man on the Moon, he went method, and he was impossible to deal with during the film. And like the documentary is great. Just to watch Paul Giamatti's face, it's like, look at that.
I watched. I was going back to some of the very season 1 of SNL, like on Hulu, and there is Andy Kaufman. They bring guests out. They do like a stand up, for a while. And I'm watching Andy Kaufman. Doesn't say one word. He comes out with a Jack in the Box, and it's playing "Pop Goes the Weasel," and he's just turning it slowly, and he's like mouthing the words to like "Pop Go," but like he's not saying anything. But it's fucking hilarious.
Sure.
Like, it just blows my mind. I'm like, it's just there's something. He's just definitely one of those guys that like it's like he just has it. Like Bill Murray is another one. Bill Murray's not even a comedian, but Bill Murray, I bet you walk into a room and it's like, oh, that's fucking Bill Murray.
Yeah.
He's an artist. I think that's what, like, especially comedians are drawn to people that like Kaufman, even if you didn't really like Kaufman. Like, even let's say he wasn't your cup of tea, you got to tip your hat to the artist. And the same thing with Bill Murray. The thing about Bill Murray that's so amazing is there's a lot of people that are comedic actors, particularly, that lose relevance as they get older. Mm-hmm. And he's just found ways to reinvent himself over and over again. Robin Williams was able to do the same thing. But I think it's just he just lives a life of an artist in his own world. You can't reach him. You got to leave a voice message on something to get him for a movie. Doesn't have an agent. There's a book that I read, I think during the pandemic, and it was some version of, I don't know if maybe it's called The Tao of Bill Murray or something. Anyway, it's just all the collection of stories of people, the parties, the weddings, the funerals, the things that Bill Murray has crashed, and walked up behind people and ate a bite of their steak and said, no one will ever believe you, and then walk away. Yeah. It's the best. Because I think Murray lives that life that if you were that guy, you'd want to believe that you would live that life, or live that life like he seems to be having fun on a certain level, or at least trying to, smell the flowers a bit and go around. And, if you're going to play golf in Scotland, grab a golf cart and get drunk and crash it into something. I don't know. Yeah. Just see what you can do.
That's true. When you are doing comedy and you started getting everything going, did you ever have any desire, since you were doing acting, to go out to LA? Or were you kind of like, I'm staying East Coast and this is where it's going to be?
I think I probably made a calculated mistake. I think I should have gone to LA. I guess when I look back, I mean, I don't do a lot with regret, but I do think that I probably would have done better career-wise if I'd moved to LA in the beginning, or if I'd started a podcast in the beginning, maybe. But, I basically, you just don't want to start over. And I think that's also part of the reason why that it took a while to get to the point to where you're working in clubs and you're traveling and you're doing work. And I knew stand-up comedian friends of mine in LA, and some of them were headliners and they were struggling to get spots because, in LA, especially back then, I mean, you didn't even have to be a comic. I mean, maybe some like Michael Richards might show up and just, I'm a stand-up, and things like that. So I think it could be hard with all the celebrities. I would have booked more, but I also, just when it came down to it, I liked my life. For good or for bad. I love New York. I love New York. I love the people in New York. I love the comedy scene in New York. And it was hard to give all of it up to start over again. So it was tough for me to give all that up. And it's still kind of that way. I mean, I go to LA when there's work, but I don't see myself living there because it's a tough town. I think, at least from what I've gone there for extended periods of time, and it just feels like it's a tough town to start from scratch. And even if you have friends, I mean, it's hard to also, like, if you get out of, I can walk out the door and I could have maybe 3 experiences in a night between performing, hanging out with friends, trying a restaurant. And then in LA, you're going to drive forever to maybe have that one thing with your one friend,
True.
I agree 100%. Going to both cities and visiting both cities multiple times, New York has it, especially with the comedy scene, because you can go to comedy any night of the week. There's multiple shows anywhere in any of the boroughs you can go to. And if you're starting out from scratch and you're a beginner, you could probably do 3 or 4 open mics in one night and just bounce around and just make do something with it, Whereas in LA, I feel like it's more like yeah, you're gonna go to LA if you're really focusing on, you know, your acting career. Okay, that's fine. If that's what you want to do, you go, you in that. But and then you end up being like a you know, assistant on a movie set, and you're grabbing coffees, and you got to really build your way up. And really, what you really want to do is just act. But when you're in New York, you can do a bunch of stuff and still do comedy and still do shows. And I mean, some of the best shows I've ever seen was like a Tuesday night at the Comedy Cellar, where there's like these guys you really never heard of before are on stage, and
Right.
it's the midnight show, you know, and you're sitting there and you're laughing your balls off at these guys and the girls, and you have no idea who they were. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later on Netflix, and you're like, oh shit, I think I seen that person at the Comedy Cellar, you know, on a Tuesday, and you know,
Yeah. See, that's the practical reason for me, at least especially early on, because like from a practical standpoint, if you do stand up in LA, which I love, it is predominantly a very specific type of audience. You know, it's a Los Angeles kind of audience. Uh, and so at least in New York, there's plenty of places, you know, like the people you're talking about at the Comedy Cellar, they could be talking to people from Manhattan, the boroughs, Canada, Australia, and some lady from Idaho, maybe somebody from Scranton, Pennsylvania, down to have a weekend in New York, all across the board. So the muscle, I mean, you know, that's why really no, for me, like no place in New York is really going to hone your act for the road and just going around the country and doing things, because I can't live in a bubble,
mm-hmm.
you know. That's what's sometimes funny. Like my mom, you're like, sometimes I think that they would think that like, well, if you're in New York, you're kind of in a bubble. It's like it's kind of impossible to be in a bubble, because you walk around and there's people from all over the world and they're right there in your face. And you have to deal with that. I mean, I'm sure people can still find a way to be in an echo chamber, but I just mean like from the practical thing, especially as an artist, I have to deal with everybody. And unless I mean, there are definitely comedians that decide to just create a niche, and they're going to say, I'm this kind of a comic and I only talk to these kind of people. But I was never interested in that. For me, I want to be someone that can offend people from both sides of a discussion, you know. So I like that.
Nice.
That's the way to do it. I mean, that's the way I look at it. It's like comedy is supposed to be to make people. When you go to a comedy club, I feel like you're supposed to. You put everything aside. You walk into a safe place where everyone's equal, everyone loves each other. And listen, if you get picked on a joke, it's out of love, it's out of fun, it's out of the art. It's not anything personal against you. If you're offended by it, then don't be offended by it. We're in a safe zone. It's a safe zone for everyone to enjoy themselves. And I feel like most people understand that when they go to a comedy club. They know what they're signing up for. They know what the ticket is. They're going in there. They may be part of the show, but there's always that percentage of people that don't understand the concept of stand-up comedy. And I feel like comics do a really good job of keep emphasizing this fact that yes, this is comedy. It's out of good fun. It's nothing personal, to keep the art going. And it hasn't been like Me Too'd yet. And all of a sudden stand-up comedy is not allowed anymore. And you can't pick on people and stuff like this. It's the most.
Well, that's happened. I mean, I think we forget, we try to make it political, but I mean, I guess it is, I mean, for some people, but I mean, especially growing up in this, you know, just growing up Southern and all that. I mean, from an ideology standpoint, I've kind of been around all over the place throughout my life, but it was the same thing. I mean, for so long, like conservatives kind of had the whole, it wasn't called cancel culture, but back then there was like the Dixie Chicks, they don't like us, so don't listen to their music. Dixie
I remember
Chicks,
that.
all of that stuff. So all of that stuff, man, from you know, all kisses from the devil, burn those books, burn that music, don't listen to the Dixie Chicks. That was all a big conservative thing, and it was all based on a morality code. And then now it's more, now the liberals have jumped in on it, you know, so they have got their version of that now as well. And what's fascinating is, I mean, right before the pandemic, one of my favorite moments was being in a club and watching a comic that I love, that's an amazing comic that's been on television, getting heckled from a Republican and a Democrat in the same set. And I was like, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's easy to bomb on one side of the fence, but you got to bomb on both sides. You defended both of them. They were both heckling you.
So as a comic, to me, that's a success. That I was able to offend both parts of the crowd. You know what I mean?
I always for me want to try to navigate it to where I can make you laugh even if you don't agree with things. But
cool, right?
that's always part of the art. I always laugh, particularly you were talking about the Cellar, and that's one of my favorite things, because you see so many amazing comedians there. And I remember this was also before the pandemic, and I'll tell like sometimes young comics when they're talking about navigating this, I was telling him about this one show I saw where every comic was so completely not politically correct, but every comic would do some version, not in some, there would be some moment where when a comic goes, hey, we all agree that you shouldn't hurt animals, right? We agree with that. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Okay, now we're going to hurt animals. It's that the thing that's funny about now versus, like say somebody like Rodney, they're just, hey, I'm just doing it. All right. What's funny now is that you almost have to weaponize sincerity and pull people. Okay, hey, your point's valid, right? This is wrong. However, and then you're going to go and you're going to do it, because I do think that people don't understand that. Well, a lot of people don't understand that comedy is not logic. Logic's not funny. Flawed logic is funny.
Correct.
If you watched me just do a stand-up act where I was completely reasonable and logical, I'm going to get thrown off the stage, right? I mean, it's not going to be funny in the slightest. So what you do is you try to take a truth and you try to put it through a lens of flawed logic, So if Bill Burr is saying that some version of, they say the hardest job in the world is to be a woman. I don't know, really? You ever been in a coal mine? That seems like a tough job. I don't think that Bill Burr actually thinks it's not a hard job to be a mother. Sorry, I said woman. It's a mother.
Yeah,
but of course it's hard to be a mother, but
it's funny.
He's just using flawed logic.
Yeah.
It's absurdity.
It's never necessarily what you believe either.
It's every
saying what is something that's funny.
Yeah.
It's every conversation. I mean, I think that I'm kind of in a different, but like I don't mind so much what's going on. I don't know how much respect I have for a lot of people. I particularly don't have a lot of respect for comedians that like to go public and tell other comedians what they think they should be doing on stage. That I can't even understand. Like if you've walked into a wall every day of your life for 10 years to pursue an art form, go with God. You do your thing. I mean, the people they'll buy your stuff or they won't buy your stuff. But I don't need to try to get 100 likes on Twitter just by going, this comic is out of line. Maybe and there are definitely comedians that I think are out of line, but I don't need to get on social media with that, because you've earned the right to fail financially and commercially and all that stuff. You're a grown up, you're an individual, do your thing.
You were just talking about like that, just telling stuff like Colin Quinn had that show, that one man show. He was doing the history of Colin.
Yeah, it's a great show.
It is. And he was just telling the history of real factual history, but he was taking his own twang to it. He was like twisting it to like make it funny. It's like, because anyone could be like, yeah, Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president, but then he'd go, something's wrong with that guy. I mean, and people would start laughing because you would twerk it so it would be entertaining, which I thought was very impressive, because you were taking something that would be so ordinarily boring and actually make it so people want to listen to, like, well, what does he think about this?
I always love when comics can do that. Like Gary Goldman making a whole meat sandwich out of states and their abbreviations. Because I was talking about The Cellar. I watched Goldman follow on a late night show once a person that was filthy. I mean, filthy, dirty, and that's no judgment on that. I'm just saying that if you're late night and people are a few drinks in, few bags in the wind. And so like all of a sudden I got to do my 20 minutes on the state abbreviations, and he crushed. I was like, you know what? Good for you, Gary Goldman. Good for you. That's nice. And I watched his HBO special called Depression, and he did a whole hour on depression. And I'm like, dude, you got to tip your hat. That goes back to the Andy Kaufman thing, man. Just an artist. Anybody that can make something where there's no cheat codes and things like that. If you can do 20 minutes late night in front of drunk people following a dirty comic and you can do state abbreviations, I got nothing but love for you.
The midnight show at the Cellar is probably the hottest show to do, because you figure you get all these drunk, I was at the show once and it was all these big, like, Sopranos guys from like Jersey in the back. Yeah. And they, whoa, Italian guys, and they get malty, and then the girls are getting malty because they've been drinking all day and stuff like this. And to watch a comic navigate through that and able to, like, to me, it's like a captain of a ship going through bad terrain, right? Going through bad, and he's able to navigate through all of it and get to where he has to be without anything happening. And he's big Italian. Oh wow, yeah, whoa, what the fuck? They're all heckling and stuff, and he's just trudging along. He's riding the waves. They say something, he's bringing it back, and and he's getting to the point where everyone in the audience is laughing their balls off, and they end up just laughing their balls off at this group of people who are just being disruptive at the company, and the comics aren't missing a step. He's just going with it and everything. And to me, that was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen, because yeah, it's 12 o'clock, everyone's been drinking all day, everyone's going to the Big Black Pussy Cat afterwards and having a few more cocktails, right?
Sure.
So it's like, to me, it's to be able to do that is probably one of the things you have to, as a comic, probably to fine tune the most, right? Is to deal with not just the crowd or just odd audiences, is that particular type of audience of hecklers and just people want to be destructive to. Because you've probably seen people who go up there and they're like mostly probably beginners, right? They get their 5 to 10 minutes and it's kind of scripted and they kind of rattle it off and they're not really flowing. And then all of a sudden you get a heckler 5 minutes in. And throws them off course. It's like,
of course.
You know what I mean? It's like, that's probably one of the toughest things to get back to get back on track.
Well, hecklers, people that are disruptive, I mean, I never really understand why I get it, they're drunk usually, but I never really understand why someone would heckle a professional comic, because it's sort of like we're about to draw guns and your gun's empty. Like I'm not
That's true.
I'm not worried about you, and it's just, how do I want to, I could bounce you around the room, I could ignore you, I could do many things to you, but it's not a matter of, it's more just for people that have done it, that are professional, I think it's just more first it's the disrespect, and it's even more so if they think they're helping you. I don't need this to happen. And it's even worse when you bounce them around the room and the crowd goes crazy and they come up after like, hey, I was glad to help. You didn't help. You were a complete piece of garbage. And that's what's so weird about stand-up, is like nobody would go watch someone play the harp and decide to heckle. Nobody goes on Broadway and tells grandma to put the gun down, to try to change the plot. But everyone thinks I don't know. It's just insane. And then newer comics, I really do feel for them. I do tell newer comics that if there is any way at all to ignore it, ignore it, because you may, especially first year comics, like you may not be, first off, a lot of people don't even know. Somebody said something, comics are like, there's 60 people laughing and there's 2 people heckling over there. These people don't know what's going on, So if you ignore it. And then if you have to deal with it. But I wouldn't try to make it a bit if I started out personally. I'd rather see a newer comic just say, hey, shut the fuck up, or I'm gonna throw you out, than I would you try to do something with them. Because, oh my gosh, man, I had a buddy of mine that, I don't know, I shouldn't even tell it. Well, I had a buddy of mine once that I loved him, but he should have let it go once.
Okay.
And the person burned him more than he burned the heckler, and that's, you're done. Like, you're done.
Michael Richards, are you?
You let him get to him. Let him get to him. But like he tried to make a joke and stuff at the expense of the heckler, and that's what a heckler wants anyway. They one-upped him, and he never got the crowd back after that. And it was brutal. It's just brutal.
That's like bringing your guitar to an Aerosmith show and think you're gonna help out in the crowd playing guitar. I got this.
It's silly. But it goes back to why people think they can have so many opinions about stand-up, because they don't really understand. Yeah. They don't really understand it. Like, it's a weird art form that way. Like, I don't watch Aerosmith and think that I could get up and play the drums. But people watch stand-up and think, I could probably grab a microphone and do a few minutes and it would be great.
They should do it. And when they do it, they realize it. I remember my first open mic, probably like 10 years ago. And I remember going up stage and eating my own dick. It's because you think you get the idea. You watch people like, all right, and then you sit there and then I actually went and I took classes after the fact. Yeah. And I was like, all right, let me see what they could tell me that I'm doing wrong. And then they fine tune it. They literally say, this is what you're doing wrong. This is what you're doing right. And I was at Improv Boston in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I took a bunch of classes there. And I did improv and I did stand-up, and doing the both actually helped figure out. Then when I went back on stage, I was like, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing wrong. This is, what I mean? It's not easy. It's probably
it's strange. Like, I know some stand-up comedians, they don't like classes, and I get it, because it is an individual art form. But every art form has some basic foundational fundamentals. Right. Every art form. So why you don't get a pass because it's stand-up? And that doesn't mean that maybe you could find your way. I think talented people will find their way, but there is joke structure. You know, there are certain things that it's not the worst thing in the world to have a peer group in a class and maybe make a few friends and start a writers group, because it can be very lonely, you know, and people come out of the gate and you deal with like open micers who they're, and that's the irony of the whole thing, is that you wind up doing a lot of open mics trying to make a set that's funny in front of people in a focus group situation that are not an actual audience, because they're not humans. They're not real people. They're all comics. And that can go anywhere from just a regular comic who's banging out 5 mics a week and they're kind of like, oh, I'm obsessed with my own thing, to just jaded people that are burnouts that have been doing it forever and they're angry at everybody at the mic. And then you see people like, when I started, I didn't understand the math on open mics. Didn't work for me, because for me, open mics were just, I'm going to practice saying the words of jokes, but I don't care what they think. That was my attitude about open mics. I don't care what the audience thinks. I need to be around I got to be around people. Yeah. So even going back to how much I wanted to be a stand-up, I was making a pretty good amount of money, like I said before, in advertising, but I barred a cabaret room near Times Square for 3 years. And just, hey, fly, you know, come to the show. So, I mean, I was getting probably at least 4 or 5 shows a week in front of people just barking. And then I would do maybe a mic a week, just enough to not hate it, you know, and practice working on things. And I was also doing improv. So I had the stand-up thing, but then I'd been doing improv for a few years longer than stand-up. And so I would try to get people to let me do 5 minutes on their improv shows and sketch shows and things like that. And then at one point, I was involved a lot. I went through Second City and Upright Citizens Brigade, and then I got involved at the Pit, the People's Improv Theater in New York, and I'm still involved with the Pit a lot now. And I would just ask them, like, could I just host a night? You know, like, you have all these shows. We'll just make it like, I promise I won't be that person, because everybody hates that person. You know, I might do 2 jokes, bring someone up. That's it. And I was always very careful to not blow lights, always be professional, and just do a joke or 2, because I knew that if I got a little indulgent, which new comics are apt to be, that it would be taken away from me. So
that's good. Wow. Chris, amazing. It's nice seeing a veteran comic and someone who's been experienced and knows what they're doing, talk to and learn all this stuff. And I think you gave a lot of information that would be helpful to people who want to start out, who are basically, especially people who have careers and just decide they want to go, hey,
I agree.
Let's do something.
Yeah.
You want to do.
I think what's different now versus then, especially, was that the institution had more power than it does now, you know, because like if you couldn't get in certain clubs or certain rooms, that was where you were. Whereas now it's all flipped on its ear, because, you know, if you've got a podcast that has 1 million followers, you're a stand-up. You may only have 4 minutes to your name, but you could headline the country. You know, if you have the right social media following, you could probably get in a movie, get in, work any clubs and everything like that. So, you know, whereas when I was starting, you know, you were just chasing this institution of being in certain clubs and rooms, and also this idea that eventually someone might want to look at a pilot, because, you know, I mean, you're looking at Seinfeld, Ray Romano, Bernie Mac, all those guys, and that were just getting shows, and that was kind of the model. But you had to do it, like, I don't know, 7-10 years, you know. Yeah. Like even when Chappelle got discovered, he started blowing up out of nowhere. He'd been doing stand-up for a while, a pretty good chunk of time. So I think there's a lot of people. It's like the Beatles. I mean, the Beatles played 10 years and nobody knew who they were, and then they became huge. So I think that it was more about craft and time. Whereas now, I mean, I don't know. I think the thing, like for me, I just like everybody, you're trying to figure out how do you define yourself and what's going on in the world today. It is different. Whereas now, like right now, especially like in Manhattan, there's like, where, let's say if there used to be like maybe 3 to 5, 6 comedy institutions when I started, now there's the comedy institutions don't matter as much. The industry's not hanging out that much in most places, you know. And and then you saw the rise of, like, even in Boston and New York and places like comedy theaters started getting play, and they might cover everything from sketch to improv to stand up. So that got more people on stage. So instead of maybe having like, I don't know, like there's 8 rings to kiss, now you've got like 8,000 rings to kiss. I mean, like for me, I sometimes will say like everybody these days is king and queen of Tiny Island, because it's between, casting people for acting, people that run, comedy institutions, theater people, and then the advent of bar shows. I mean, right now in Manhattan, everybody's producing their own shows. That's what I think, instead of barking, what people are trying to do now is more just run their own shows and collaborate with other people that run shows and swap spots with people and do that kind of thing. And however you get there, ultimately, you just got to get the time in. You got to get your 10,000 hours in and all that. But I don't know that Mike's necessarily, you got to keep the attitude that I am practicing against an audience that's not reflective of usually an audience that I'm actually working towards. That's why, like in a mic, a lot of times I'll hear somebody do like a great joke and maybe it's clean and nobody laughs. And then someone else will get up and go, I got raped by a bear and it had AIDS. And everybody goes nuts in an open mic because it just jarred their dead soul. And somehow, oh, yeah, he said AIDS. That's funny. That, and all that. But ultimately, you grind and you find your way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris, joining us tonight. Where can people find any of your website? Obviously, you want to share with us, everyone?
Yeah, you can. Well, all my social media stuff is, on Instagram, I'm at Chris Griggs comedy, but my website, chrisgriggscomedy.com, has all my social media stuff on it. And if you are in Manhattan, I have a reunion show. I'm in a comedy group called the Baldwins. We've been around for probably 12, 13 years. New York Times recommended. We've been in, so we're good. And we're doing our only show this year because of the pandemic and all that. And some of us, one of the people in the group is on Broadway run, and we've got a few of them that had babies during the pandemic, and all that. So, but we're doing one show Saturday night, probably our only show this year, at the Pit on 29th Street, and it's be 7:00 on Saturday. And then the following weekend, if you live in Yonkers, Daddy's coming to Yonkers. So, get on my website and email me, and I'll send you the ticket link and all that stuff. But thanks so much for having me, guys. It was a fun conversation.
It was great to meet you, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah, you as well.
Talk to me, man.
Thank you.
We'll look for you. How's that sound?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a good night, man. Thank you.
You too. My God, dude. I think you and I collectively said about 2 paragraphs during that whole thing. He just took off. Like, he just knew what to say and did not stop.
It was really nice talking to him because you got a perspective of a guy who's been doing it for a little bit longer than most people we've talked to. Probably in the last.
It was great.
Right? So you got a guy who's like, you got a guy who should who our friend Eric should have the same type of conversation with, but it's not quite that. You know what I mean?
It sucks though, because I had a lot I wanted to ask and say to him, but like I just couldn't neither of us could really get a word in. He's just gone.
I actually want to see some of his. I think that's quite the ballsy move to go from being working in marketing in the biggest city in the country, which is like marketing is all about New York, right? And say,
that was going to be one of my questions.
And not to mention, it's not like he was from New York and it was just another day in the park to him. He was like from Memphis. He was going from, a middle-sized city in the country to the second biggest city in the country to do one of the most premier occupations you could be doing. And if like marketing, I think is probably number 1 in New York of all the cities in the country. If you want to be a marketing guy, and then say, hey, fuck it, I'm just gonna do improv.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do stand up. I'm gonna ditch marketing in New York to do improv,
which is admirable to do. I mean,
false.
If I trust me, there's plenty of things I want to do if I didn't have a fucking mortgage and a fucking kid and a wife. You know what I mean? I'd be like, hey,
and student loan debt.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do student debt. Yeah, that doesn't fucking hurt, right? Yeah, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna pursue my career in juggling. I'm just gonna be a world juggler.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a
juggled before, but let's see how it goes.
Say fuck it.
What's the worst that could happen, right? Lose it all. No, good for him. Chris Griggs, everyone. I didn't fuck up his name. I thought I was gonna fuck it up. I didn't.
You did great, buddy. Good guy. He's a really good guy.
I've been drinking, so imagine if I wasn't.
Look at that shit.
Hell yeah, man. All right, sir. What are you plugging? I know you
can check out the Whirl and Potato. Yeah, there's a Halloween video that came out last week, and I'm working on a new one, and that should be out in a couple weeks.
It's gonna be a Thanksgiving one. Are people gonna be dressed as Indians?
Ooh, I should do a Thanksgiving video. I probably
Ooh,
should.
that'd be actually a good one. Yeah, Thanksgiving. Yeah, and you get me on where'sarty.com for all your Where's Arty needs. So yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. See you later. Toodaloo, motherfuckers. Bye.